Welcome back to the Worldtellers podcast. It's been 2 hours since we got here this morning. So
it's been a good time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to jump into John 11 when Jesus brings Lazarus back from the dead. I am going to read most of the chapter 11, so bear with us. You can skip ahead if you want to. But John 11 says, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, 'Lord, he whom you love is ill.' But when Jesus heard it, he said, 'This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it.' Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this he said to the disciples, 'Let us go to Judea again.' The disciples said to him, 'Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again?' Jesus answered, 'Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him.' After saying these things, he said to them, 'Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him.' The disciples said to him, 'Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover.' Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, 'Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him.' So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, 'Let us also go, that we may die with him.' Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you.' Jesus said to her, 'Your brother will rise again.' Martha said to him, 'I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.' Jesus said to her, 'I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?' She said to him, 'Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world.' When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, 'The teacher is here and is calling for you.' And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.' When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, 'Where have you laid him?' They said to him, 'Lord, come and see.' Jesus wept. So the Jews said, 'See how he loved him?' But some of them said, 'Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?' Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, 'Take away the stone.' Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, 'Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days.' Jesus said to her, 'Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?' So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, 'Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me.' When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out.' The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, 'Unbind him and let him go.'" So, we started out with the shortest verse, and
Then you read the entire...
We were going to go with John 11:35, and then we ended up with the whole chapter almost. But
I was thinking about that. How we went. we're gonna pinpoint the shortest verse in Scripture, and we read the largest groups.
But you had to get the context.
I know. But that's the cool thing about it is that wasn't our plan, but I'm glad that we did it.
Yeah, because we were going to pinpoint, verse 35, Jesus wept, but yeah.
And we still can. Now we have the context of why Jesus wept.
So
why did Jesus weep? Jinx.
Nice.
Wow.
You guys.
That was not
brothers?
Dude, we've been working on that all week.
Yeah.
35 years.
It worked out perfect.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
I guess I'll ask the question. You guys can comment then. Why did Jesus cry or weep? And I think maybe that insinuates more than just a tear shed, but he was weeping. There was a genuine sadness, a broken, and in other versions it kind of describes being troubled in the spirit as being like angry,
indignant, yeah,
against death and the pain and the suffering. So it's like, but Jesus had full control of the situation. He purposely delayed so that Lazarus would end up in the tomb, so that he could resurrect him from the dead, so that he could glorify God the Father and testify to who he was. So it's like, why was Jesus weeping? Help you guys help me make sense of that.
Well,
Any
I feel like I
thoughts?
have the answer, so should I go last? Or
You can give us your answer first. We'll see.
yeah we'll judge
okay.
it.
I think, all right, so what comes to mind when I see this is, you guys ever watch a movie and someone's crying on there and it just makes you want to cry as well because they're crying, you know what I mean? And I think there's some people that don't have that response because their hearts are kind of hardened anyways, but I feel like if you have an open heart, no, I'm serious, man. There's been times in my life where I'm like, oh, that's not affecting me at all. But there's also times in my life where
I know. I get
even someone I don't know in a story I know is fake is still drawing this out of me. And then how much more so when it's like someone you love.
Yeah.
Or like even one time there was a time with Lauren and there was something that happened at work and she had gotten as an older man and she had gotten to know him, and then I think, I guess he passed at some point anyway. And she just kind of, she doesn't ever really do that. She's normally rock solid, but she just kind of broke down in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, I'm crying too. I don't even know. Like, I have no idea who this person is. You know what I'm saying? And so it's almost like the situation is separate from my emotions, just being in tune with hers. And so when I see this, because clearly, and it even tells you, like, Jesus had this situation. This was gonna, the verse we left out was verse, you were just picking a stopping point, but 45, the next verse was, therefore many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done, believed in him. And it's like, man, that was the goal. You know what I mean? There was reaping that little harvest right there, or big harvest, whatever you're going to look at it, was worth all of that drama and the pain and everything that had happened. But still, being in the presence of them who he loved deeply, just... I don't know. That's what I think of when I see it.
Good.
I think that's a great. And I've honestly never thought of it like that. But yeah, when you watch a movie, an emotional movie, good or bad, like it gets you, like you get kind of caught off guard by your emotions. Like, whoa, I'm feeling this. I feel sad. I shed a tear. I think that's.
There was one movie. It was like
thought.
Be Like Mike, or I'm not sure what it was back in the day, and I was probably like 15 or
Little
18.
Bow Wow?
Maybe, I don't know. In the end, no, it was kind of a serious movie. In the end, the kid died. Like the kid dies, and anyway, it was a. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm butchering that.
I don't think that was.
I
like
was on a.
Mike.
No, maybe it wouldn't be like Mike because that was pretty light. But it was like the guy who comes in. And he's like the basketball coach or a baseball coach.
Oh,
Coach Carter.
No,
With
Keanu
Samuel
Reeves.
Jackson?
Keanu Reeves.
Hard
Not Hard Knock. What is it?
I can't think of the name of it.
Anyway,
Yeah, little Jimmy.
yeah, little. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
I know a movie.
That
is
movie,
not a lot
I'm sitting there on a date with a girl trying to look macho, and I'm sitting there, and it was like hurting my whole body. I wanted to cry so bad. I'm like, oh man, I can hold this back. But it was just so emotionally like wrecking. You know what I mean? And it's a movie. It's not. It has nothing to do. It's not my life.
Real life.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
Right.
Hardball.
Hardball. Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Oh man, I just ruined
Don't
it
watch
for
it.
you.
You'll cry.
Little Jimmy dies at the end.
I don't know if his name's Jimmy, and I don't remember.
Ruining movies.
Somebody
Sorry.
dies.
Last week we ruined Book of Eli.
He was blind.
Nah, he's deaf.
What are your thoughts, Josiah?
No, I would agree with Jonathan. I think that there's God is in the person of Jesus Christ is not far from. It makes me think of Isaiah 53.
I had that written down as a note.
Really, I looked at your notes.
I know.
But
didn't get the
it
memo.
says that he took our infirmities. He took a man of sorrow, familiar with suffering. Like he carried, like he had the capacity to feel those feelings. Like Jesus didn't like shy away from that. He entered into that, knowing full well the hope and the redemption and the resurrection on the backside of that. And so he still met Mary and Martha and the Jews where they were at. He's not aloof. He's right in the midst of, the difficult situations, the trials, the things that we're not sure of. Why God? Why God? Why God? He's right in the midst of it, and he's part of that. But I don't think this is where I think the cool thing about it is he meets them where they're at, but he doesn't leave them where they're at. There's something and I don't want to get like too caught up on it because this is like a whole separate thing, but I think there's an aspect of where I think Christianity's sometimes people struggle with the idea of like God being part of their suffering, and I think that's a very valid thing. And then I think there's people that trust that God's with them in their suffering, but don't trust that He's able to kind of like that there's not healing that He can bring to it. They're just kind of stuck in this suffering, and it's like God's just part of this. He's with me in this, but it's like there's no answer. Like He can't provide an answer to this. And I think there's that combination of like, yeah, there's going to probably be in our lives. We talked about it last night, like count it all joy when you enter into trials. And it's like, well, a trial in and of itself means there's a friction point there. If it wasn't a friction point there, it wouldn't be a trial. But yet by being in that trial, being in that friction point, being in that sadness and stuff, Jesus is going to meet you where you're at. He's part of that. He's familiar with that. He's in there with you, but He's going to kind of walk alongside you to where it says in James that will be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so I just think about that. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you spend some time thinking through the end of 52 and 53 of Isaiah, think about that God taking upon Himself the sufferings of humanity. It's a good place to, and then think about that in the context of Jesus wept. I think sheds some additional light on it also.
Man, I love this. I'm glad we're diving in on this because there is a lot of depth here, and I'm just kind of processing like when Jesus says it. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father, and how He is a representation of God the Father. And it's like so many times it's kind of easy in my mind to be like to kind of just have this picture of God who sees me in my struggles, but because He knows what's coming after, He knows how He's going to use this in my life for good, and I'm gonna recover. And it's like you see all that in hindsight, and you're like, okay, well, God knew what He was doing there. I think you can have that vision in your mind of because God is all knowing. Maybe He's not suffering with you. You know what I'm saying? Because He knows what's coming, or you know what I mean. And because He can see the future, He knows, hey, this is just a temporary thing, and so therefore you'll be okay. But I think the reality is what Jesus is showing here is even in those moments, like you're saying, like God is with you and deeply like your heartbreak is His heartbreak, maybe even more. There might be a whole different level of heartbreak that we don't even understand.
I think you can get a little glimpse of that, like if with your children.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you feel their disappointment, their sadness, their pain. And I think as they get older, it's only going to be more so. It's like where they suffer an experience of like rejection or heartbreak. It's like you're going to just feel that.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
So Chessa gave Uriah like a little bit more of like a high and tight haircut, and so yesterday Chessa kind of put in a little bit of like a mohawk kind of look, and he went to school, and on the way home he's like, yeah, the kids were laughing at my hair. And I mean, as a dad, and I mean he didn't seem like too affected, but like as a 3-year-old, like I don't know, he's not like daddy, like, but he's like, yeah, I didn't like it, they were laughing at my hair. And I was like, dude, who cares, your hair's awesome, man, like it's all good. But like there's this level as a dad, it's like, oh man, no, it's you just feel this like weight. It's like, oh bud, no, you're good, like it's okay. But like and the 3-year-old, that's how he's processing it. Like there was something there he didn't enjoy about that feeling, and it's like, oh man. And it's like to the nth degree as a God, it's like, you're my child. And anyway, so when you said it as a parent, you get to feel that.
seen Adeline, like somebody didn't want to play with her or something, and she had like sad, or she was very sad about it, and I was like, man, I feel that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And me especially, I think sometimes we can look at like feelings and emotions as somehow it's a bad thing, and it can be it to a point, but I don't know. I think that's Jesus has the ability to feel those things as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in different versions, like in the ESV and the NASB that I got, and then I was following along while you were reading in the NLT, and it was like he used the word angered, like Christ was, but it was a righteous anger. It wasn't like an angry that took it, like, to your point about feeling emotions. There's not an emotion that we can feel that is bad in and of itself. I can feel a selfish anger, like I've been offended, or I can feel an anger like a death and sin and brokenness in the world. I feel like there's that depth too. That's, yes, Lazarus, a friend, seeing Mary and Martha, his friends, suffering through that loss, and like there's the humanity of it, that Christ is really experiencing these feelings just as real. It's more real than what we'd feel during a movie. It's like you just feel it as a human being. You if you have emotions, you are feeling those things, and it speaks to all of that. But there's also like a deeper, like a representation of Lazarus dying in and of itself. That's like a representation almost. I was thinking through is like it's a representation of death and the fall and brokenness and sin of the world in general. That it's just like it didn't have to be this way, and Christ is there on that mission to redeem all of that. And there's just like a depth to it that's more than just Lazarus died, but there's like, death, there's a sting right now, but I'm going to take away that sting ultimately. And seeing his children, seeing his creation suffering under the burdens of that, there's a righteous anger that burns against it, and I'm going to restore that. And then ultimately using that very specific example with Lazarus to be an opportunity to speak the truth of who he was and his mission.
I was talking about it and thinking through it. It's Jesus was, and I don't know how it all works in his flesh. Like, does he recall what it was like at the moment of creation, and like what it was like? Was he the one that breathed the breath of life in the Adam, like, and like just pre-fall, and then just like you're saying, kind of that cosmic fall, and having that like, this was not what it was intended to be. Like all this pain and suffering, like, and I know that there's a day in the future that all this will be wiped away. But like in the here and now, there's real pain, and I'm in it. I'm feeling it. I'm sensing it. The people closest to me, I'm seeing it. He probably also saw the death of his earthly father, Joseph, because it seems like he kind of falls off the map between his childhood and his adult. Like, he's entered into death and been a part of that. And in that culture at that time, like, we live in a society where when somebody kind of dies, they kind of get put in, like, it's isolated, but like in that culture, they were around death. It was a common thing. Like, babies dying because but just like all that, like, he saw that, he entered into that, he was a part of that. And so you have this cosmic side, like on the grandiose scale, then you have but also very specific with a friend of his, Lazarus. But then there's got to be an element, and it doesn't state it, but it's like he started to weep when he saw the tomb. And it's like the tomb is like, here's a big stone and a tomb, and it's like, and he's, after this, it leads into his going into Jerusalem. He gets anointed in Bethany, then goes into, like, he knows where he's going, and he knows that in the very near future he'll be the one in that tomb being called forth. Like, there's got to be an aspect where there's this recognition of that in that moment. So it's like individually he senses it because it's a foreshadowing of him. He sees it in his friend, so it's very specific to Lazarus. But then there's like this grand scale of it, the cosmic perspective of it. And so I think there's like a multi-layer. Now, who knows? He could have been weeping for something completely different.
No, I think that's
specifically stated.
I think it's all part of like the story of the Gospels, and where we are at in the story when this occurs is all part of. I think that's all going on, and I do think Christ was aware of all. Yeah, it's like, did he remember creating, or was that something that he set aside to become the suffering servant? You see, I don't know all the nuances on that. William and Craig's got like He's been in this. It's like a 44-part series on the deity of Christ, like on Christ, like what that looks, every aspect of what that could possibly look like. It's like I'm not even close to understanding all the different arguments he's making, but
There would have to be a lot of conjecture there.
exactly. So it's like there's a lot of there that I think you can. There's certain things you don't want to say that are just flat out like, well, that sounds like blasphemy, but you know, you want to. But there's a lot of there that we don't know what it would be like to be like Christ in the flesh, who was the second person of the Trinity. Like, I have no idea. I can conjecture. That's it.
Yeah, because we are
No experience of what that is.
We're only half of the equation. We're only fully human. Not
Yes.
Yeah.
fully God.
I'm sorry, just I was reading something while you were talking, so I'm hoping I'm not restating what you were just saying. I'm sorry, but there's one thing there's been times on other podcasts where I read through it and I'm like, oh, I must have missed that he just said the same thing. You know?
You'll catch it on the recap if you listen to it.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, when I'm reading this too, I think there's also and I've noticed this recently. A good friend of ours. His mom was really upset because I think her brother was like hospice level sick, you know, and it was like coming close to the end, and they knew it. And anyway, it was just like we stopped and kind of prayed together. I was just trying to I don't know, whatever the moment was. The moment was there for me to kind of just talk to her for a minute, and I deeply care about her, and I've known her for a long time, and so trying to find that line between like, you know, and I'll ask people all the time, like, oh, are they saved? You know, because that's the game changer, right? Like death is a portal, you know, as Finn has said, death is the portal, you know, between here and the afterlife. And so it's like, okay, if someone is saved, if someone knows the Lord, then when they die, like the very next breath is the best moment of their life, you know, being that much closer to the presence of God. It's just like to me, that's just understood, you know? And so one, having that conversation, but also two, kind of pointing out those things and being like, oh, I understand, you know what I mean? But the next place is going to be so, like, if we have eternal mindsets, right, and we're living our lives for eternity, then death itself is actually, in some ways, almost something to celebrate in the aftermath.
It's a gain, as Paul says.
Yes, truly. So what Paul says with that to live is Christ, to die is gain, is like, I believe that with every part of me. And so, but it is still, there's a dance there. There's a softness there of trying to find that balance, because this person is still hurting, and everyone around that's still on earth here around that person, like, they're experiencing a loss. And so trying to point out, I don't know, I think this kind of Jesus Wept kind of speaks to that too, where it's like he was feeling her pain, and he was just there weeping with them. But he knows more than anyone that this is not the end for this man, even if he didn't revive him, or you know. And so I think that's a good example for us, to where it's like we need to make sure that we aren't just walking around cold like, nah, he's in heaven, you're right, and because that's cold and that's not loving. I don't think, you know,
it's not helpful.
It may be true, it's true, but it's not. You know, it's not. It doesn't feel like love, I don't think, when you kind of go that route with someone, and it's almost like diminishing their feelings. And also too, where it says right after Jesus wept, so the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him," and the very next, it's almost like there's like two kinds of people here. And I feel like in life there's two kinds of people to everything. Like whenever Mary used that expensive, like a year's worth of wages bottle of perfumed oil on Jesus's head, and Judas is like, we could have sold that and fed the homeless, you know? And Jesus is like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm here for a moment. The homeless will always be here. And the same thing here. A group says, but some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? And it's almost like that arrogant sort of mindset, I think. And I think people could say that about our lives in general. It's like, oh, well, you know, if God is real and God loves us, then why do we have to die anyway? Like, why is this whole process? You know, and I think there's just, it's so easy for us as human beings to like assume we know it all. But the reality is we're coming at it from a place of we don't know anything. And there's so much more going on. And the way God has planned things is a perfect plan.
And what's crazy, it doesn't, like, God could have done everything in the Bible a different way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He could have.
And God could have prevented all of this.
And had he done it a different way, you could still ask the same questions that those skeptics are asking, like, couldn't he have done this? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter which way God did it, you could have still been the type of person who would ask, why didn't he do it a different way? Why did it have to be 12 tribes? Why couldn't it have been?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it could have been, but it wasn't, and that's okay. You know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
And it's like a level of arrogance there.
It really-
like, because who are we to question? We're the creation. We're not the creator.
Well, that's what I'm kind of. So that last verse where it says, "Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw all this, basically they just saw what happened." So there's the other side of that where seeing this was the thing that made them believe in him, and they were like, "Oh man." So there's also that other side where we can come to everything with arrogance, or we can come to everything with humility, and having a level there where it's I'm not overthinking God's plan. In fact, I'm trusting His plan. And if it brought me to Him, then thank God for that. Thank God for being exactly that way.
And pain.
Yeah. And I think all of us in our own lives, it's like, man, why did I have to go through that 20 years ago? I had a 10-year span there that was just seems like such a waste. But God has brought me to where I am now, within or regardless. You know what I mean? However that works, I don't know. But like, you know what I'm saying? It's like for me to be arrogant about that is just arrogant, as opposed to just being thankful.
Just something Josiah said earlier that stuck with me more just from like a interesting thought side of things. See what you guys think. But that like life, there's going to be friction in life. There's going to be suffering in life. There's going to be that pain. But it's like once we die and are resurrected and in eternity, there's not, in heaven, there's not going to be that friction, right? Like that's just no suffering, every tear wiped away. It's like life on earth now is, I don't want to celebrate that stuff, but it's like, this is the only time you have for that friction to be occurring and to be living through that friction from a place of faith and dependence and trust in God. Because once you're in heaven, there's no more seeing in a glass dimly. It's you're fully known and know fully. You know what I'm saying? Like there's that opportunity is gone. It's not an eternal opportunity of living through suffering and having faith. It's like that is gone. Like you've played the game of life. Not to say, I'm using bad analogy, but you see what I'm saying? Like that, that's my view at least, that there's no more of that friction in heaven anymore. This is the only time that we can ever know what it is like to live through a season of suffering and pain and heartbreak, but from a place of we're given that opportunity to do those things, live life that's going to bring guaranteed suffering and pain and struggle from a place of faith. Like that's not an opportunity I think we're going to have in heaven. Not that that's a opportunity you want to have forever, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there is something that we have on this earth right now that we have that opportunity.
It feeds into what we were talking about last night. No, that's you, man.
No, I was. Go ahead.
No, you.
I wasn't going to go into, but yeah, I was thinking about that the conversation from last night too. But let me say this part first is when you're talking about the friction points and stuff, is the passage that kept coming to me is like faith, hope, and love, and I think it's in 1 Corinthians or 13 or 14, but it's talking about
13.
Yeah, but it's like faith, hope, and love, but faith and hope will fall away, and it'll only be love, because faith and hope. But that's faith and hope is how we should be walking out those trials here and now, is in faith. And Jonathan brought this up last night in our group, is like God's purpose, in a sense, the thing He cares about more, the most about us in the here and now, is like building a character of faith within us, devoted and reliant upon Him. And so those trials are there as friction points to make our faith refined and strengthen it and to persevere in it. And normally those trials feel like bigger trials because our perspective is, I want to have comfort, I want to have peace, I want to have X, Y, and Z. And so there's a lot of flesh in that, which makes those trials more. And then we have to come to a spot where our heart then becomes in line with, no, I see this trial for what it is. It's an opportunity to grow closer to you, God, which then normally leads to that trial kind of, the perspective of what that trial is no longer is a trial, but almost a opportunity to grow deeper in my reliance and dependence upon the Lord. And so it's like that juxtaposition, but yeah, it's changing our perspective on what a trial looks like. It's like, here's opportunities that we'll never have again for all eternity to grow in a deeper relationship with the Lord on this side of heaven, and also to reflect that faith and hope to those around us. Because like in 1 Thessalonians 4:13, Paul reminds the people there, brothers, we do not want you to be ignorant about those who fall asleep, or to grieve like the rest of men who have no hope. We believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. It's like, we're not those that grieve. We grieve.
That's what he's saying. He
But we're
didn't
not
say
those
don't grieve. He
Yeah,
said
he
don't
said-
grieve like these other
Yeah,
men.
because I think what Jonathan says also wise, where it's like, you want to meet somewhere where they're at and not be like, oh, well, they're in heaven. Why are you upset? It's like, no, there's a human part, and Jesus reflects this, that obviously we all believe that Jesus never sinned. He lived a perfect life. So there's nothing wrong with weeping, knowing that in the next couple minutes, Lazarus will be renewed, and it's going to be this huge proclamation of, look at, I am the resurrection and the life, and like I'm doing that right now, and you'll see it again in the near future, that I'm going to die and then be resurrected. But it's like, it's okay to grieve, but we're not those that grieve without hope. We have a deeper anchor in that storm, which is the hope and reliance and dependence upon Christ Jesus in that. Jonathan, I don't know if that's where you wanted me to go or not.
Yeah,
but-
I mean, I think you're all over it, and kind of just what we're talking about, and just the verse in James of "Count it all joy, brothers," and it's so counterintuitive, or it says "Count it all joy" when you face various trials that test your faith, and that testing produces endurance, and the endurance produces
Well, I mean, you just equate it to working out. You go to work out, it tears your muscles, but it builds it back stronger. So that's how we grow stronger in our faith and on our dependence.
Yeah,
in the
and it's
Lord.
basically the only way.
Yeah.
When things are going great, there's really no
Yeah.
growth.
I mean, what were you?
I was going to say real quick, just on that note that you guys are talking about, that like a lot of times we pray for the Lord to like change our circumstances, but he answers our prayers by changing us through our circumstances. So it's like the circumstances are still the same, but you are now a different person. So therefore, those circumstances are now different. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? Like, because you are not the person that you were before, and you now have grown through time in prayer about this and reflecting on this and going through this, you are now the type of person who can now handle that circumstance and situation in a way that has now radically changed that situation.
Yeah.
And exactly what Brett just said. He said it way cleaner and simpler.
As you're saying that,
I have fewer words that come to my mind than you guys. But I mean,
wisdom.
I had a real life example of this happen last year with my brother, and like the whole idea of grief. I see my mom and dad, and then I see his wife, and so it's not the like we don't have an absence of grief or sadness, but it's like even in the midst of that, we can have joy. Right? It's the combination of the two.
Yeah, and I think most people who are like psychological, like psychologists or stuff like, I'm pretty sure the consensus is like, no, you should take time to grieve, and like that is actually a good thing for you to like work through, you know what I mean? And that way it's not just some pent up thing, like there's a process there of grieving and then kind of working through, I think that's kind of understood at this point. And to your point, Finn, like I think so many times, like I'm just imagining like, there's a situation in my life and every day I have to pick up this weight and it's just so heavy. It's like right on the edge of what I can do. And so our prayer is like, Lord, just help this thing to be lighter. And the reality is, or it's almost like what we're praying for is that this thing will just be lighter. But on God's end, normally it's, I'm going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
And this thing is just still going to be what it is, but it's not going to affect you the same way. You're just going to be able to pick it up and walk. So it's like,
You're
but
no
that's-
longer a child. You're grown and you can carry this weight.
and if we can
You
live
can
in
go
that,
you can go that direction, or you can go the other direction.
And not to say that he doesn't take the weight away sometimes. I'm just saying like there's it's all the
there's seasons in life where maybe there's a different thing that is on you, or maybe there's a season in life where you're just not having to deal with that, and that's great. And I think kids are a good example. Like there's going to be different phases that are hard in one area and not in another. But if we are like generally trying to stay in that place of living life from a perspective like James is talking about, like I'm not waiting on the weight to get lighter. I'm going through this season of trouble. I'm going through this season of challenge right now, and knowing it's going to make me better. And I've had little glimpses of that where it's like I know that this second child we're having, like the times of growth are hard.
Third child.
And I keep
My
getting
second child.
Well, no, I'm saying the one we have right now, like with Levi. All of those challenges are stretching my patience and stretching my just ability to do more and to be moving all day long. But I know that that's a great segue into child number 3. And when child number 3 comes, there's going to be a whole new season of growth there that's going to hurt. But after 3 months and 6 months and 9 months, it's, you know what I mean? It's going to be, and so I'm trying to keep that mindset. And I think when you're in that mindset, it makes the challenge, it puts the challenge in its place almost, you know, instead of just being this overwhelming, like, oh, life just sucks and I can't deal with it. You know what I mean? It's almost like it brings it down to, you know, what it truly is. You know, it's just an opportunity for growth.
Yep.
But that's all perspective, and having what you just described as your perspective is radically transforms how you move forward every day and moment by moment, because it's like it is perspective. It is that faith, that hope that is beyond the here and now, and taking it on and shouldering that burden and facing it and walking it out in faith, and again having that perspective, which radically transforms then your circumstances.
Yeah,
because its perspective is so powerful.
Even just the simple attitude of hope versus attitude of defeat. As soon as you go into a defeated attitude, I mean, the whole world is just too
the
heavy.
baby's crying. Two children are crying. One's bumped their knee. One wants a snack. There's a poop diaper you got to change. It's like overwhelming, and it's like perspective. This is annoying. I want to change this circuit. This is terrible. Or it's like opportunity.
Yeah, one's a focus on self, and the other's a
Let me read this
not
from.
focus on self.
Right.
Real quick,
Oh, you're good, bro.
talking about that again, self. Earlier in chapter 11, it says, "This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." That and the Jews coming to believe in him seem to be the two reasons that this.
Read that one more time. I almost feel like that exact statement could be true about any
situation
form of suffering and difficulty that we as believers face in our lives.
It says, I'll back up. I'll start in verse 1 again. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of hold on a second. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it.
Yeah. Insert any challenging situation prior to that statement, and I think it would ring true.
What's interesting, I'll table what I was going to read. But what's interesting, no, you're good. So Lazarus was in the tomb for how many days?
4 days.
4 days. And so Jesus was in
For 3 days.
So he was told it, and then he said he remained there for 2 more days.
Yeah, Lazarus had already
Was already dead
Yeah.
when the message got to Jesus. Because I looked it up, and they say approximately 16 to 20 miles away, which is about a 1-day travel. So and it wasn't Mary and Martha that came to him; they sent people to go let Jesus know. So probably from pretty soon after those messengers left to go tell Jesus, "Come and help," because Lazarus is sick. He probably had died already, and so probably by the time Jesus was told this, Lazarus had already died. And it's just kind of an issue. I never really actually thought about it, and so. And we always like, oh, why didn't he go sooner? He would have saved Lazarus, but it's like he had already.
We think that
passed
because
on.
Martha or Mary, one of them literally says, "Why didn't you come sooner?"
Yeah,
But yeah, okay, so that's interesting. Thank you for that.
I don't know exactly what you do with that. Does it mean we should be coming to Jesus sooner before he gets to that?
Yeah, I think we always.
But then
should,
there's this aspect where it's like, okay, yeah, obviously in a very literal sense, Lazarus was dead, so he could not have been upset. But like the only person that doesn't weep in the story is the one that was the victim, if you will. The one that died is everybody else is weeping and upset. Jesus weeps and upset. The Jews, Martha and Mary. It's like, but Lazarus is the one who.
But he suffered. Whatever caused him to die was probably painful and
right.
suffering.
I think it's interesting that I mean, this is going off on a
Tangent. What is a tangent, mathematically speaking? On a straight line, it's a line that goes
Can't
off
remember.
another direction.
can't remember from 11th grade. Haven't used it since.
John would know.
What was it again?
Isn't that what you're naming your third kid? Tangent? Tangent Hayes?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Nope. Maybe. Think
Yeah.
about it.
But I'm gonna teach you to.
We're just called to plant seeds.
I'm gonna teach him to introduce himself
Guys,
as.
Brett's about to go on a tangent.
Cosine.
Yeah.
It's a cosine.
My name is Tangent, but really what that comes from is. That's how you have to introduce yourself.
Brett, were you going to read something from the Bible?
I was just gonna
Because I
say-
got something way cooler.
Sorry, man.
Go ahead. You got
I'm
something?
I'm joking. Tangent.
So the sister sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. Doesn't say Lord. Didn't say it was Lazarus. It says the one you love was ill. That was pretty interesting.
John's all about love, man. He refers to himself as the.
Oh, Finn's got a
Sorry, guys.
work
You
call.
got to take this.
Do you have a work call? Not sure why, but I'll call them back after.
6:57.
Jeez Louise. Another
that's
interesting
early.
thing is Thomas,
Yeah.
classic Thomas. But I can relate to Thomas because I feel like that's he kind of is like, okay, we'll just go with Jesus and I guess we'll die with him too. Like, I guess we'll follow him.
But
too.
that's like pretty.
That was the disciples'
like a-
main concern. Like, don't go back to Judea. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Be stoned.
be stoned and killed. And then Jesus, like, no, we're going. He's like, all right, let's all go.
Well, sometimes
He's
we
like,
have
yeah,
to
let's go die.
maybe there's an aspect as a disciple we have to enter into the things that make us feel the most vulnerable to see the power of God move. I don't know. There's something to be said about that. But then also Jonathan talks about the verse after you finished, Brett, talks about how many believed in him. But then it also says that some pretty much went and took that and doesn't say they believed him. They just went and kind of passed along to the Pharisees that, hey, Jesus did this, which then led into Caiaphas and then pretty much saying we need to kill Jesus. But which is interesting. If you read that rest of it, it's interesting because Caiaphas pretty much had a prophecy that there would be one that would die for Israel to pretty much save Israel, which is interesting because obviously that's what literally Jesus. So in a way, it's like, was Caiaphas doing the will of God? But anyway,
That's what it says in Acts.
well,
I think this whole story. I mean, obviously, it's very well. If you look at it from a sense of, Lazarus did die, and Jesus had a plan with this, and others are going to come to believe in him because of this. It's almost like a perfect sort of foreshadowing of what Christ was going to do on a worldwide scale for all time. In like through this death and suffering and resurrection. It's going to change the eternity of many, and so pointing that out.
Jesus tells them, take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been in there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you. So it seems like he keeps telling them, you need to trust me, you need to believe in me. They never, it doesn't explicitly say they've come to the conclusion in their mind that they're like, okay, we believe you. But what it does say is after he says, if you believed, you'll see this, then there was an action associated. They then rolled away the stone. So is belief more of an action and less of a propositional truth that we place in our head? Like, okay, Jesus, we believe that you'll resurrect him, but he's given us a command to roll away the stone. Is that more of a belief in of itself, even if we're still like, all right, I'm going to roll away the stone, but like God, you're going to have to meet us here, because in my mind, rationally, all I'm going to think is there's going to be a dead man and a strong odor that's going to get brought forth. Like, what is
It's
more of a...
It's more than just a mental assent.
Right.
It's a-
Well, same with Thomas saying, like, oh, yeah, we'll go to... He had
I mean,
no
I think-
idea what Jesus was about to do. He's like, I guess we're going to go get killed, but we're going to follow you
Yeah, so it's
anyways.
Like genuine belief always leads to action. In my opinion.
Right, and even in the sense where it's like, I know this is what I should do, but rationally, even if in a way, because we talked about last night in James, where it's like, ask for wisdom, don't doubt, because those that doubt are, it's like, well, how do you not doubt? And it's like, maybe it's okay to have a level where it's like, you're still working that out, but your action is still saying,
an honest level of saying, I don't get this,
Right.
but I'm going to roll the stone away anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we or I can be found guilty very easily, being like, once it makes sense and I have faith in my mind, then I'll put forth the action. But it seems like God's normally like, put forth the action, and like the faith and all the other things will kind of grow in conformity as you walk in accordance with what I've called you to do.
Yeah, man, I think it correlates perfectly what you're saying now with what we were talking about last night, which is James 1. But
by the way,
it is, yeah.
last night we're referencing a Bible study
Yeah, sorry.
on Wednesday nights
Yeah,
that I haven't been to yet.
Yeah, Brett's been.
I'm like Paul. I keep
Dude, get
getting
in there.
prevented to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with last night in a Bible
Wow.
study, we're-
Referencing Paul for missing. Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Good. Go, John.
Going through James 1, and anyway, it was obedience. So they obeyed him to
Yeah.
roll away the stone.
Yeah.
And because of that obedience, they were able to see something that changed their lives
Yep.
forever. And they told their people, I'm sure that story got passed down forever. I mean, it literally has. And so I think that's a lot of what James is talking about is don't just be doers or don't just be hearers of the word like a man who sees his face in the mirror and then immediately forgets when he walks away. And it's so easy to do that. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna read my Bible, I'm gonna do my thing. But then, and I know from my own life, just in the last couple of years, I've actually started to choose to obey what it's actually saying. And that it was almost like I was in a holding pattern.
Doesn't it say like don't be just hearers of the word, fooling yourself?
Yeah, deceiving yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Be doers of the word. And I know from my own testimony that it was when I started being a doer of the word and actually choosing to obey, even if it wasn't something I wanted to do, but I'm choosing to obey God. All of a sudden, it was like I realized now I was like in a holding pattern before as a Christian, as a professing Christian who wasn't like living it out, to all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize what I didn't know. And now that I'm trying and actively obeying God, I'm seeing the fruit of that in my life. And all of a sudden the word and the gospel, like it all starts to become real because it is real in your life. It's not just head knowledge anymore. I'm actually living.
Comes a reality.
Yeah.
That's what I always said at
Yeah.
my own personal journey, like exactly the same thing. It's like Christ was an idea and somebody I claim belief in. And, was I saved at that time or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
I never denied faith
Oh, you
in
definitely
Christ,
weren't.
but I certainly wasn't living like I was.
Joking.
But then it was like that's the best way to describe it. Christ became a reality in my life that literally dictated change. Like the reality is if we want to leave this room, we need to go through that door. The door's right there. We're all going to walk through that door because that's what we see. That's what's real to us. That is the way to get out of this room. It's going to affect the pathway that we go to get out because it's real. So it's like once something becomes a reality in your life, it affects change in your life in a way that you almost have to respond by necessity. And it's like, yes, you might not want to do certain things in a moment, but because this has become so real, it's like you can't avoid not doing them.
Right.
And it's
and at some point,
that's a once and for all thing, and then it's a daily thing.
Yeah. At some point, it just becomes sort of your subconscious actions, and so it goes from being this list. It goes from being this thing in your mind that you can poke at and analyze, and that's fun to do. And okay, well, this doctrine and that doctrine. But once you start obeying what it's saying, it starts to become on you and in you. And then at some point, it takes a lot less thinking about it because your actions are just coming from that place of having Christ within you and His life becoming your life and letting Him into different areas of your life. And anyway, yeah. There's been times where I've been deep in prayer and I'm like, oh Lord, and praising God and just like asking Him to use me in this way and this way. And the very next thing that comes to my mind is this thought and this, almost voice of the Lord comes to mind. Well, I want you to do this. And immediately it's like, oh, I wasn't ready to quit dipping.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to crawl back where I was and sit there. Yeah, seriously. The Holy Spirit points out that thing that is the thing that He wants, that you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, do this. And it's like, oh man, I don't know about that, But as soon as you start becoming obedient to those things, oh man, God, it's almost like you're opening the door for Jesus to do in you what He's done in so many others who have also obeyed, including the people.
A reciprocal opening.
I don't do those big words.
I think we read this quote, but it's what we're touching on right now is perfect. It says, Watchman Nee said that all knowledge is the outgrowth of obedience. Everything else is just information. In other words, you can believe the truths taught in this book, the Bible, yet they can still remain just information to you. If you convert this information into knowledge, you must obey it. It's like, unless we're applying, it's like, no, Jesus, we believe you. Okay, roll away the tomb. No, we believe you. Well, then roll away. No.
Yeah.
No, but we believe. Then roll away. It's like, I mean, I know that sounds like it sounds funny because we know the story and stuff, but put yourself in that situation. You're surrounded by a bunch of people, and it's like, you want me to roll away the tomb? Like this, like we're grieving enough, and now you want to put us in the face to, like in the flesh, in the physical. It's like we're just going to be smelling the odor of a dead person, and it's not going to make the situation any better.
Yeah.
Roll away the stone.
Oh my goodness, we do that because in their minds we're like, we already know what's about to happen. We already know what's in there. We know what it's going to smell like. We lean on our own understanding, and there's some things the Holy Spirit convicts us on where it's like we can't see what that's actually going to be yet. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and we have areas in our life where it's like it's a tomb that's like closed off, and it's like he's like, oh, let me in there, open it up. No, you can't fix that one. You got no, don't feel comfortable with that. No, just let me in there. No, that's maybe somewhere down the road, but I'm not ready for that yet. Like I don't think you're able to actually be sufficient for that thing. So I'm just going to kind of keep that blocked off over there.
Yeah.
No, it's dead until you roll it away. Then I can call it forth into life.
Mm-hmm.
Even that same analogy with like talking to someone about God or asking to pray with someone in your mind, and I'm sure it's probably the evil one as well whispering in where it's like, oh no, they're not going to receive that. I actually already know how they're going to receive that. It's not going to go well. I'm just not going to do that, Lord. You know, even though you're feeling that tug, you know what I'm saying? And the times that I have stepped into that and been like, okay, I don't know how they're going to react to this. And we do pray. It ends up, there's been a lot of times where it's like, that was actually the thing it was a radical moment, you know, just from being obedient.
Dude,
even when I knew it wasn't going to be.
I'm glad you said that. So there was a guy that at our home church, we had our first baptism this past Sunday, and we prayed over him afterwards, and Jonathan said something about like, hey, do you remember exactly? Pretty much like I feel like the Lord's saying like you're gonna draw others to Christ like by your life. And I forgot. I didn't think about it till afterwards. But when he first told me he became a Christian and stuff, and we were talking face to face, it was probably months. I don't 6 months ago. I don't know. But I told him, I was like, dude, I feel like you're gonna like that was what I told him. I was like, dude, because he's got a strong personality. He's a big like. I was like, dude, I feel like the Lord's gonna use you to like just show him to a ton of other people. And then anyway, so then you right after your prayer, like I feel like the Lord was like, hey, you're not just called to just be like an isolated Christian. Like you're there's a calling on your life. Anyway, it was just I didn't think about that. So, but you probably in that moment was like, okay, this is gonna be a little weird to like kind of just throw this out there in front of the group. But
yeah,
I don't know.
There was a word that God put on me to say that you know, and while we were praying, and so yeah, man, when all of a sudden the prayer comes up and you look at that, man, you're like, okay, I'm about to say this in front of all these people. Like, that's a leap of faith. Yeah. But that's also something I've been praying for.
Sorry, I didn't verify. I didn't confirm that in that moment. I wasn't thinking about that.
No, it's all right.
I was like, oh, that's funny because that's,
It's good. It's good.
Brett, what tomb needs to be opened in your life? Let's just get this out.
Let's go through all of them.
Do you have some dead Lazarus?
They're all open. Don't you smell it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To some, it smells like death, and to others, it's the sweet aroma of Jesus.
Of life.
Yeah.
It's a pleasing aroma.
Yeah. We did have a skunk in here last week.
Oh, dude.
Oh, yeah. I forgot
Whatever
about
that was. It? Did you confirm?
It had to be. No, I think it just sprayed.
Even by later that day, it was fine. But that morning,
fine. But yeah, it was.
I forgot that.
I think it had just sprayed that morning. I don't think there was a dead one.
We have a pretty fancy setup here, guys. Pretty fancy podcast studio.
Yeah, like how was there a skunk on the 32nd floor? You know. No, but have y'all noticed? There's a incredible amount of skunks being killed on the side of the road. Like, do we have a skunk problem?
I don't know.
In Charlotte or
population of skunk?
I don't know.
Are we displacing them with all this construction? Because there's these huge buildings everywhere. I don't know.
Save the skunks.
Yeah, man. Get on board.
Yeah.
Or just the opposite.
It's their anal glands. We watched the video on it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have like their it's like the
that's what I
anal
thought
glands.
was.
Like, you know, dogs and like that's what they're sniffing on each other. Like that, they spray out of their anal glands, and it's like and there's a solution that will get rid of the scent, but like you can't package it because when it's bottled, it will explode. What? Anyway, we watched like a 3-minute video on it because I was like,
wow,
really?
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I was
trying
trying
to just take a bath in tomato juice and it kills it.
But the video I watched was like that doesn't really actually
It's just a lot of work
They're,
to make you
And
think
now
you're doing
you have
something.
they're just trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
That was a lie made
Interesting.
up by the tomato industry.
Don't get sprayed by it.
Just
You're going to need a pallet of tomatoes.
save
And
this
if
going.
you need
Here's
a
a
pallet,
link.
if you need a pallet, I got a forklift for you.
Oh,
yeah.
bro.
Oh,
That's
nice.
great. That's great. If you need a place to store it and the roof on top of it's in bad shape, let
Yeah.
me know and Josiah will insure the building.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And you're probably going to need a shed, so let me know.
So
What's the shit?
What are you doing? Are you,
To store the tomatoes that has a bad roof. I don't know. You know what? I was trying to hop in
And
there
if there's
with you
a
guys. And,
fire?
yeah.
Hombre
Well, I
de
used to
fuego.
build.
Oh, you were a shed builder? I thought you were a deck builder.
I thought about, even now, man, like as a side gig, just to build those, like,
you should.
Sheds?
I had a
'cause
customer.
I think they sell them for like
$6-7 grand.
$5,000, yeah.
I looked.
So-
I looked. That's why I ended up. I've enjoyed
Don't worry
building
about
it.
it, guys.
Sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
Don't worry. I'll tell you later. I'll text
No,
you
I'm
later.
sorry. I was,
Right, you're allowed to talk when the mics are off.
Yeah.
I had
Back in
a
your
customer
tomb.
back in the day who they
All right, that's enough.
they built
Thanks.
sheds. They were Midianites.
Oh, they
Oh,
and
really?
they did. Isn't that who built Josiah's shed?
A Midianite?
I thought you. Where'd you buy your shed?
From up in
Bunchy? Bunts? Bunts?
I thought it was. I
They
thought
didn't seem
Chessa
like
said
Midianite.
that,
no, this place
that's
is
where
up
you
past
bought it from.
Statesville.
Oh.
and that's all they do.
Yeah,
That's legit.
they can't use in their personal lives can't use any type of technology, but at work,
Yeah.
full blown technology.
That makes sense.
He drives his forklift.
Yeah, and they were
from-
like, "Hey, can you soup this forklift up?"
Did they really? Yeah. Serious?
I was like, "Well,
They're like,
we
hey,
needed to go faster and
Brett's
lift
like,
more.
let me.
I need to go 70.
You want me to sell you
I mean,
something?
this is a forklift, guys.
Yeah.
We don't-
Safety's kind of important, but
Yeah. You can die on this thing.
Oh, sure.
All right, I'll get you the real model that we hold back.
yeah, it's quadruple the price. But
Yeah. Jesus wept.
Jesus. No, this is good, man. There's a lot in this, in the passage and also in the verse, man. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I feel like that's starting to resonate in my mind. Of just like Jesus was showing us who God the Father is and who He is as God. You know,
confirmation of the Trinity.
as a piece of as a part of the Trinity. You know. So yeah,
Amen.
Amen. All right.
Spend some time thinking about that.
The forklift being souped up.
Yeah, that. No, this is well. Hopefully, we've all spent some time thinking about it because this is what we were doing this week. But like, yeah, I just for whoever's listening, like, just I feel like you could spend some time meditating on and reflecting on. I just feel like Christianity gets a bad rap, and there's this vicious God that's in heaven, and then we're all hateful, and He hates everyone, and it's like, man, Jesus wept. That's the God that we serve.
Yeah, and I think also
with us.
too, what we can learn from that as well. At least for me, we can also learn that. I don't know. I think there's just right now I'm starting to feel convicted about like when Camden is crying about something that I think is foolish because I can see past it and she can't. You know, like there's probably a lot of times where I'm just kind of steamrolling that as opposed to just kind of getting in there with her and being and like letting her feel how much I care. You know what I mean? As opposed to just like it's gonna be all right. Stop crying. You know, because God could do that to us, but He doesn't.
That's good.
And,
that's a good practical application
yeah.
of this. That's
Well,
good.
Might be a way we can step into that and practice for the rest of our lives. So
Yeah, my wife has some very irrational things she gets upset about.
yeah, you just gotta shut that down.
Yeah, babe, stop.
You just kind of grab her lips. Shh, 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 shh. And-
It's different when you're dealing with your spouse.
yeah.
Yeah, spouses are different. Good thing my wife doesn't listen to the podcast.
Okay.
I don't think mine does either.
Yeah,
Maybe she does a little bit.
occasionally.
Does anybody's wife listen to the podcast?
Occasionally.
Yeah, Mackenzie will, and then give me healthy criticism.
Healthy.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when you said Mackenzie was listening and thought Josiah, what he was saying was
She's like, I
point. I was
resonate
like,
most with Josiah.
Mackenzie listen?
I'm like, Josiah. Yeah,
Which
she
made me
does
be
this.
like, man, if I resonate with her, I probably need to change my message. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
She
kidding.
won't listen to this.
She
Yeah.
won't get that far.
No, that's
I'm
not.
joking. I'm completely joking.
I'm gonna isolate that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have noticed recently.
She's
at
my spirit
church-
animal.
At church and just in general, man. Especially if I feel like I don't know, man. Like I can see God moving in Alicia's life, in Chessa's, and in Lauren's. You know, and it's just a steady Eddie, and it sounds like Mackenzie's too. You know, I see the other two more than Mackenzie, but you know what I mean? It is,
Yeah.
it is cool that, even though they're so busy with kids and everything else and having to just hold the place together, that God's also obviously working in our whole family's lives. And it's just kind of cool. There's been a couple things I've noticed here and there where it's like, oh man, like that is really happening, And so
That's awesome.
I think the ladies are leading Romans 2.
Alicia was in it, and she was like, "Hey, I want to." She was writing down notes and stuff. She was
Really?
Yeah, she was
Really?
like, "I want to bounce some ideas." I was like,
well, just this last week was when I was noticing she was like, oh yeah, I'd rather, she said something just off the head of a verse that she had read about this, about Romans 1, and I was like, oh, that's
First, you know how to
legit.
read?
yeah. Well, I was like, well,
Yeah, what
I was like,
man
first
read
off,
this to you?
I was like,
Who
first
taught you?
off,
Did Brett teach you how to read?
Oh,
like-
the ladies talk at your church?
I was gonna say,
Well, I was
like,
going to say,
can
we
you-
went the complete opposite of
when
first
we
Corinthians 14.
when we left, I was like, well, make sure you just tell me, and I'll relay that. To
Yeah,
her.
I can say it for you, no problem.
Yeah, and then we'll discuss when we get home.
Maybe that's our passage next week. Tackle that.
Mike Winger's
Uh,
got an 11-hour.
We'll let Mike just
11
handle that one.
Yeah, I want to stay
Give
away
me
from
the-
that one as long as I can.
Give me the 1-minute summary of what Mike says.
He comes to
It's
the
a
view of
nuanced balance.
So think about it like this,
complementarian.
just practically. Now, what you do with a single woman, I don't know, but as a married couple, if you're doing a home church gathering and if the women are not supposed to speak during the gathering, but yet if to keep them engaged, because there's also a level where it's like the women just show up, they could care less about what's taking place, and then the guys just have a fun time talking about God, and then they go their separate ways. But if there's a level where the woman is dependent on her husband to receive and also to relay her feelings and her heart through her husband. That means the woman needs to be in tune with her husband. The husband needs to have ears to hear what his wife is saying and also be able to relay it from her perspective into a group. So there's a dependence upon the husband and wife. There's a relationship being built there.
and a submission to one another.
Right. And so there is that aspect. This is not my idea. My dad's thought through it, but I don't know. So there's an aspect where that sounds cool. I don't know what that would actually look like practically. And obviously in our day
pretty
and age,
offensive to our modern views.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
Probably beyond the scope of figuring it out at the end of our podcast.
yeah. Sorry, we kind of like we were closing out.
Jesus wept, and then
but no, just
jump into this too.
while I'm thinking about this,
over our last couple minutes of conversation.
yeah, while I'm thinking about this, just like what you're saying too, like the biblical version of a marriage is two halves of one whole, and so I can see certain value in like me and my wife have discussed this, and this is what we think this means, or you know what I mean. You're kind of giving as opposed to what could be a very singular thing of this is what I think, this is what my wife thinks. So she's voicing her opinion, I'm voicing my opinion. They may be the same or not. There is that union and that covenant there between me and my wife and God, and this is our take on it. What do you guys think? You know what I'm saying? So I can see. I don't know. That's a good point, Josiah. You've opened my eyes a little bit.
That's,
I remember
my
heard your
dad
dad
brought
say
that up.
that a
That is
while
not for
back,
me
too.
at all.
That's what it says in the passage.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if it's done right and done well, it makes sense. If it's done any other way than that, it can quickly start to be offensive to some ears, or you know what I mean. There's probably a lot of ways to go wrong with it.
Yeah. I don't know what it looks like for a single woman that doesn't have like a voice to.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Brett's like, anyway, so that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
We're all wearing head coverings.
I just gotta pee really bad.
Same
yeah,
here.
yeah. Let's pray.
Pray us out.
Lord, thank you for another good morning, and Lord, thank you for giving us this platform to just come together and fellowship with each other, and hopefully, some of the things we've said will have glorified you, and Lord, I just ask that you would just, if anyone is listening and follow along, that you would give them ears to hear, and in whatever way, Lord, use this to help them in their walk, Lord. Lord, just ask that you would just let us be that light and let us be that servant, those servants for you today and moving forward. And Lord, I ask you to just help us to apply this, what we've spoken about today, to our own lives. Let it be real in our own lives. Let us be doers of your word and of your teachings, and then let that shine to anyone around us. So we love you, Lord, and we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Until next time.